Thalia Ross had accepted exactly 3 rides from strangers in her 26 years of life. The first was from a soccer mom when she was 16 and late for school. The second was from her elderly neighbor when her bike got a flat. The third was from a man in a Porsche 911 on a frozen Colorado mountain road at 5 in the morning, and it changed everything. Her Honda had given up the ghost 2 miles from Ridgeline Summit Resort, sputtering to a stop on a stretch of highway where cell service was a fantasy, and the nearest town was 20 minutes back. The temperature hovered around -12 degrees, and her shift started in 55 minutes. Thalia stood beside her dead car, watching her breath crystallize in the air, and seriously considered her options. Walk 2 miles uphill in the dark and freeze to death, or wait for someone to pass and risk getting murdered. Both seemed equally probable at this hour. Headlights appeared around the bend, not the high beams of a truck or SUV, something lower, sleeker. The car slowed as it approached, and Thalia's stomach tightened. This was either salvation or the beginning of a true crime podcast. The Porsche pulled onto the shoulder 20 feet ahead of her, its brake lights casting red shadows across the snow. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, dark hair, expensive coat that probably cost more than her rent. He moved like someone who'd never questioned whether he belonged somewhere, the kind of confidence that came from money or power or both. Car trouble? His voice carried over the wind, low and even. Battery died. Thalia stayed where she was, hand on her phone even though it was useless out here. I'm fine. Someone from the resort will come get me. In an hour, maybe 2. He walked toward her, and she noticed he didn't slip once on the ice. You'll be hypothermic by then. I'll wait in my car. With no heat? He stopped a respectful distance away, hands visible. I'm heading to Ridgeline. I can drop you. Thalia studied him. Mid-30s, probably. Clean-shaven. No visible weapons, but that didn't mean much. His eyes were dark, almost black in the pre-dawn light, and they held hers without wavering. Not aggressive, just steady. How do I know you're not a serial killer? You don't. His mouth quirked, almost a smile. But serial killers usually don't drive cars that are easily identified and cost $150,000. Rich people commit crimes too. Fair point. He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. Call someone. Tell them my license plate, description, whatever makes you feel safe. But decide fast, because we're both freezing. Thalia looked at the phone in his gloved hand, then at her car, then at the empty road stretching in both directions. She had 45 minutes to get to work. If she was late again, her manager would fire her, and she couldn't afford that. Rent was due in 3 days. She took the phone and photographed his license plate. Then she climbed into the Porsche. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Cologne, maybe, subtle and expensive. The seat warmers were already on, and the heat wrapped around her like a blanket. Thalia fastened her seatbelt and glanced at the man sliding back into the driver's seat. Thank you, she said. Grant. He pulled back onto the highway, the car handling the ice like it was nothing. Grant Bellini. Thalia Ross. You work at the resort? Waitress, restaurant and bar. She kept her hands in her lap, aware of how out of place she looked in her black work pants and pilling sweater. You staying there? For a few days. Skiing? Business. That tracked. He didn't look like the ski vacation type. Too controlled, too serious. The kind of man who probably had an assistant schedule his leisure time. They drove in silence for a mile. Thalia watched the road, hyper-aware of every movement he made. But Grant just drove, his hands steady on the wheel, his attention on the highway. You always work the early shift? He asked. When they need me. Tips are better at dinner, but I take what I can get. How long have you worked there? 2 years. Thalia glanced at him. Why? Just curious. He downshifted as they approached a curve, the engine's purr deepening. You like it? It pays the bills. That's not what I asked. Thalia bristled. It's fine. Good enough. Good enough isn't good. Well, not all of us have Porsches and business meetings at ski resorts. The words came out sharper than she intended. Grant's mouth curved, definitely a smile this time. No, not all of us do. Something in his tone made her look at him again. He wasn't mocking her. If anything, he sounded almost amused, like he found her prickliness entertaining. I didn't mean, Thalia started. You did. It's fine. He glanced at her, and for a second, his attention wasn't on the road. It was on her. Complete and focused. I like that you're honest. Thalia's breath caught. There was something in the way he looked at her. Not leering, not invasive, but intense. Like he was trying to figure her out and didn't plan to stop until he did. She turned her attention back to the window. There's the resort. Ridgeline Summit sat at the base of the mountain like a crown jewel, all timber and glass and understated luxury. The main lodge glowed with warm light, and the parking lot was already half full with luxury SUVs and high-end sedans. Grant pulled up to the employee entrance at the back. This work? Perfect. Thanks for the ride. She reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped her. Thalia. She looked back. Grant was watching her again, that same focused intensity. What time do you get off? Her heart kicked. Why do you want to know? Because I'll be waiting. It wasn't a question. Wasn't even really a suggestion. Just a statement of fact, delivered in that same calm, even tone he'd used for everything else. Thalia should have said no, should have laughed it off or ignored it completely. Instead, she heard herself say, My shift ends at 2. I'll see you then. She got out of the car and walked toward the employee entrance without looking back. But she felt his gaze on her the entire way. The morning shift was chaos. A group of 50 corporate executives had booked the lodge for a team-building retreat, and they all wanted breakfast at the same time. Thalia ran food, refilled coffee, smiled until her face hurt, and tried very hard not to think about Grant Bellini. She failed spectacularly. Every time the front door opened, her eyes flicked toward it. Every time a tall, dark-haired man walked past, her pulse jumped. It was ridiculous. She didn't even know him. One car ride didn't mean anything, except he'd said he'd wait. At 1:30, Vanessa, another waitress and Thalia's closest friend at the resort, cornered her by the coffee station. Okay, spill. You've been weird all morning. I'm not weird. You smiled at table 12. They've sent their food back twice and you smiled. You're never that nice. Vanessa crossed her arms. What happened? Thalia busied herself refilling a coffee carafe. My car broke down. Someone gave me a ride. And nothing. Thalia. Fine. He was hot. Really hot. And he said he'd wait for me after my shift. Vanessa's eyes went wide. Wait for you where? I don't know. Here, I guess. Is he a guest? He said he's here for business. What kind of business? I didn't ask. Girl. Vanessa grabbed her shoulders. You got into a stranger's car and didn't even ask what he does? It was 5 a.m. and I was freezing. Fair. But you're meeting him after work? I don't know. Maybe. He didn't exactly ask. He just said he'd be waiting. Vanessa's grin was wicked. Oh, I like him already. At 2 o'clock, Thalia clocked out, changed out of her work shirt, and walked toward the front lobby with her heart in her throat. He was there. Grant stood near the massive stone fireplace, hands in the pockets of dark jeans, watching the room with that same calm assessment he'd used on the highway. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. He walked toward her, and Thalia was suddenly very aware of how much space he took up. Not physically, though he was tall, but in presence. People moved out of his way without realizing it. "You came," she said. "I said I would." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I don't know you well enough to know what you do." "Then let me fix that." He gestured toward the lodge's bar. "Have a drink with me." "I just got off a shift serving drinks." "Then have coffee, or water. I don't care what you drink. I just want to talk to you." It was the directness that got her. No games, no pretense. Just straightforward honesty. "Okay," Thalia said. "One drink." They sat at a corner table in the bar, away from the main flow of guests. Grant ordered whiskey. Thalia got a glass of wine she knew she wouldn't finish. "So," she said, wrapping her hands around the stem of her glass, "what kind of business are you here for?" "The boring kind. Contracts, meetings, numbers. That's vague." "It is. Are you going to tell me what you actually do?" Grant's mouth curved. "Eventually. Why not now?" "Because I like that you don't know." He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "You don't look at me differently. You're not trying to impress me or figure out what I'm worth." "Maybe I don't care what you're worth." "Exactly." His gaze locked on hers. "That's rare." Thalia took a sip of wine to buy herself time. There was something about him, something that made her want to keep talking, keep pushing, keep figuring him out. "What about you?" Grant asked. "Why Ridgeline?" "I needed a job. They were hiring." "And before that?" "College. Dropped out after 2 years when the money ran out." She shrugged. "Figured I'd go back eventually. Haven't yet." "You want to?" "I don't know. Maybe." Thalia traced the rim of her glass. "What about you? College?" "Business degree. Never used it." "Why not?" "I went into the family business instead." There was something in the way he said it, flat, almost emotionless, that made Thalia think the family business wasn't something he wanted to talk about. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Grant was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Every day." The honesty of it surprised her. He didn't try to soften it or walk it back. Just left it there between them, raw and real. "So why are you here?" Thalia asked. "Really?" "Because I'm trying to do something different." He finished his whiskey and set the glass down. "Build something that's mine, not my family's. Mine." "And that involves Ridgeline?" "It does." Before she could ask more, his phone buzzed. Grant glanced at it, and something hardened in his expression. "I have to take this," he said. "Don't leave." He stood and walked toward the windows, phone to his ear. Thalia watched him, noting the shift in his posture, the way his shoulders tensed, the sharp edge in his voice when he spoke. Whatever the call was about, it wasn't good. Grant came back 5 minutes later, his calm mask firmly back in place. "Everything okay?" Thalia asked. "Fine, just business." He sat down and met her eyes. "What are you doing tonight?" "Laundry, Netflix, the usual." "Cancel it." Thalia blinked. "Excuse me?" "Have dinner with me instead." "That's not a question." "No," Grant agreed. "It's not." She should have been annoyed, should have told him he couldn't just order her around. Instead, she found herself smiling. "You're very sure of yourself." "I know what I want." His gaze held hers. "And I want to have dinner with you." "What if I say no?" "Then I'll ask again tomorrow." "And if I say no then?" "I'll keep asking until you say yes." Thalia laughed. She couldn't help it. "That's borderline stalking." "It's persistence. There's a fine line. I'm very good at walking fine lines." Grant leaned forward, and suddenly the space between them felt smaller, charged, Say yes, Thalia. She should say no. She barely knew him. One car ride and one drink didn't mean anything. But there was something about the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, the only person who mattered, that made it impossible to walk away. Yes, she said. Grant's smile was slow and devastating. Good. I'll pick you up at 7. I didn't give you my address. I'm resourceful. That's creepy. That's honest. He stood, pulling out his wallet and leaving enough cash on the table to cover both their drinks and a generous tip. Wear something warm. We're going somewhere outside. Where? You'll see. And then he was gone, leaving Thalia alone with her half-finished wine and the unsettling certainty that she'd just agreed to something that would change her life. Grant picked her up at 7 in a different car, a black Range Rover this time, better suited for the snow. Thalia had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on jeans, boots, and a thick sweater under her coat. He looked her over when she climbed in, and the approval in his eyes made her stomach flip. You look good, he said. Thanks. You didn't tell me where we're going. I know. He drove them up the mountain on a private road Thalia had never noticed before. After 20 minutes, they pulled up to a small cabin tucked into the trees, all wood and glass, glowing with firelight. This is yours? She asked. I'm renting it for the week. It's beautiful. Grant came around to her side of the car and opened her door. Come on, I'll show you inside. The cabin was even more stunning inside. Open floor plan, massive stone fireplace, furniture that looked like it cost more than her car had when it was new. Through the windows, she could see a hot tub on the deck, steam rising into the cold night air. I thought we were having dinner, Thalia said. We are. Grant moved to the kitchen and pulled out ingredients from the fridge. I'm cooking. You cook? Don't sound so surprised. I'm just... She watched him roll up his sleeves, exposing forearms that were far more distracting than they should have been. You don't seem like the cooking type. I'm full of surprises. He glanced at her. Pour us some wine. Glasses are in the cabinet. Thalia found herself relaxing as Grant moved around the kitchen with easy competence. He wasn't trying to impress her with expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. Just simple, good food. Pasta, fresh vegetables, bread he'd picked up from the resort's bakery. They ate at the small dining table, and the conversation flowed easier than it had at the bar. Thalia told him about growing up in Denver, about her parents who'd retired to Arizona, about Vanessa and the other servers at the resort. Grant asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He told her less about himself, his childhood in Boston, parents who were no longer in the picture, no siblings. He'd left the family business 5 years ago and had been building something new ever since. What kind of business? Thalia asked. Real estate, development, buying properties that have potential and making them better. Like resorts? Sometimes. There was that vagueness again, like he was holding something back. But Thalia let it go. Everyone had secrets. After dinner, they moved to the couch in front of the fire. Grant poured them each another glass of wine, and they sat close enough that Thalia could feel the heat of his body. Thank you for tonight, she said. This was nice. It's not over yet. What else did you have planned? Grant set his glass down and turned to face her fully. I need to tell you something. Thalia's stomach tightened. Okay. I didn't end up at Ridgeline by accident. I'm here because I bought the resort. The words took a moment to land. When they did, Thalia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. You what? I bought Ridgeline. The paperwork finalizes on Friday. Thalia stood, needing distance. You bought the resort where I work. Yes. And you didn't think to mention that when you gave me a ride this morning? Or when you asked me to have a drink with you? Or when you invited me here for dinner? Grant stood too, his calm unshaken. "If I'd told you, would you have come?" "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." He moved toward her, and Thalia backed up until she hit the wall. "You would have looked at me differently, treated me differently. I wanted you to see me. Not my money, not what I own. Me. You lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." Grant stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "And I'm telling you now, because I'm done pretending I'm just some guest passing through. I'm not leaving, Thalia. I'm staying. And I want you to stay too. I work there. Not as a waitress." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw. "I want you with me, running the resort, making decisions, building something together." Thalia's heart hammered against her ribs. "You barely know me." "I know enough." His thumb traced her lower lip, and her breath hitched. "I know you're smart. I know you're honest. I know you don't take anyone's shit, including mine. And I know I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since this morning. Grant, tell me you don't feel it too." His voice dropped, rough and low. "Tell me you didn't think about me all day. Tell me you're not thinking about me right now." She couldn't. Because he was right. She had thought about him. All day. Every moment since he'd driven away. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Maybe." His forehead touched hers. "But I'm done fighting it. I want you, Thalia. And I'm not a man who walks away from what he wants. What if I say no? Then I'll wait." His hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers threading through her hair. "I'll wait as long as it takes, but I won't stop trying. I won't stop wanting you." Thalia's hands came up to his chest, and she could feel his heart beating as hard as hers. "You're very intense." "I know. It's a little scary." "I know that too." Grant pulled back just enough to see her face. "But I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to use you. I just want you. All of you. Everything you're willing to give me." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. It was claiming and possessive, and everything Thalia hadn't known she wanted until his mouth was on hers. She kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers gripping his shirt, pulling him closer. Grant's hands were everywhere, her hair, her waist, her hips. He walked her backwards until she hit the couch, and then he was over her, his weight pressing her into the cushions, his mouth moving to her neck. "Tell me to stop," he said against her skin. "If you don't want this, tell me now." Thalia pulled his face back to hers. "Don't stop." He didn't. Thalia woke in a bed she didn't recognize, wrapped in sheets that felt like silk. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Grant's cabin. She'd stayed the night. She turned her head and found him beside her, still asleep. In the morning light, he looked less dangerous, almost peaceful. But when his eyes opened and focused on her, that intensity was back. "Morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "Morning." He reached for her, pulling her against him. "Stay. I have work in 2 hours. Call in sick." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." His mouth found her shoulder. "Stay with me today." "Grant, please." The word surprised her. He hadn't struck her as a man who said please very often. But here he was, asking, not demanding, asking. "Okay," Thalia said. "I'll stay." They spent the day at the cabin. Grant made breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. They sat on the deck in the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching skiers on the distant slopes. "I need to ask you something," Thalia said. "Okay." "What's the family business you left?" Grant was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, "Import-export. Based in Boston. My father ran it. My uncles worked for him. It was lucrative. Very lucrative. But it wasn't legal. Thalia's stomach dropped. What kind of import-export? The kind that gets people arrested if they're not careful. Grant's jaw tightened. I was part of it for 10 years. I did things I'm not proud of. Made money I didn't earn honestly. And then one day I looked at my life and realized I hated everything about it. So you left. So I left, 5 years ago. I took the money I'd made, invested it in legitimate businesses, and never looked back. He met her eyes. I'm not that person anymore, Thalia. But I won't lie to you about who I was. She should be scared, should probably run. But all she felt was a strange sort of understanding. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I want you to know what you're getting into. If you're going to be with me, you need to know the truth. And if it changes how I feel, then I'll live with that. Grant's hand found hers under the blanket. But I hope it doesn't. Thalia thought about it. About what he'd told her. About the man she'd seen over the past day. The one who'd cooked her dinner. Who'd held her through the night. Who'd said please when he asked her to stay. It doesn't change anything, she said quietly. People aren't just their worst moments. Grant's relief was visible. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Thank you. They stayed at the cabin for 2 more days. Grant handled business calls and emails from the living room while Thalia read or explored the property. At night, they cooked together, talked, made love by the fire. It was easy. Too easy. Thalia kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. On the 3rd morning, she woke to find Grant already dressed, pacing by the windows with his phone to his ear. When he saw she was awake, he ended the call. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing. Just resort business. Grant. He sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. The staff found out I'm the new owner. They're nervous. There's going to be a meeting this afternoon. What kind of meeting? The kind where I tell them nothing's changing. That their jobs are safe. That I'm here to make things better, not worse. Are you nervous? No. He looked at her. But I want you there. Why? Because you work there. You know the staff. You can help me understand what they need. He took her hand. And because I want them to know you're with me, that you're important. Grant, I'm a waitress. You're not just a waitress. His grip tightened. Not to me. You're smart and capable and exactly the kind of person I want helping me run this place. Run it? I meant what I said. I want you to work with me, not serving tables, making real decisions. You know this place better than I do. I need you. Thalia's chest tightened. This is happening very fast. I know, but I'm done pretending I don't know what I want. I want you, in my life, in my bed, in my business. All of it. She should say no, should take time to think. But looking at him, at the intensity in his eyes, the certainty in his voice, she realized she didn't want to. Okay, she said. Grant's smile was pure relief. He kissed her hard and fast. Get dressed. We have work to do. The staff meeting was in the main conference room at 2. Thalia stood at the back, watching as Grant addressed the room. He was good at this. Calm, confident, reassuring. He promised job security, better benefits, investment in the resort's infrastructure. No one would be laid off. Things would only get better. When he finished, Vanessa found Thalia immediately. That's him? She hissed. That's the guy from your car ride? Yeah. The guy who owns the resort now? Yeah. The guy you've been sleeping with for 3 days? Vanessa. Oh my God. You're living a romance novel. Thalia laughed despite herself. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Vanessa grabbed her arm. What are you going to do? I don't know. He wants me to work with him, like actually help him run the place. Are you going to? Thalia watched Grant across the room, surrounded by staff asking questions. He caught her eye and smiled, and something warm bloomed in her chest. Yeah, she said. I think I am. Over the next 2 weeks, Thalia's life transformed. Grant moved her out of her cramped apartment and into a suite at the resort. He hired a manager to handle day-to-day operations and asked Thalia to work with him on bigger decisions, renovations, staffing, guest experience. She was good at it. Better than she'd expected. And Grant trusted her. Really trusted her. He asked her opinion and listened when she disagreed with him. They worked together during the day and fell into bed together at night. It was intense and consuming, and everything Thalia hadn't known she needed. But there were moments when she caught Grant staring out the windows with that same hard expression he'd had during the phone call at the bar. Moments when he'd disappear for an hour to take a call he wouldn't explain. She didn't push. Everyone had secrets. Until the night someone from his past showed up. Thalia was in Grant's office, reviewing renovation proposals, when a man walked in without knocking. Tall, dark suit, cold eyes. He looked at Grant and said something in Italian. Grant's entire body went rigid. Get out, he said. We need to talk. I said get out. The man's gaze slid to Thalia. This her? Leave, now. They're not happy, Grant. You left. You can't just... I can do whatever I want. Grant stood, and Thalia had never seen him look so dangerous. I paid my debts. I'm out. Tell them to accept it. It's not that simple. It is, and if they have a problem with it, they can come talk to me themselves. Grant moved around the desk, putting himself between Thalia and the man. Now leave before I make you. The man held his gaze for a long moment. Then he left. Grant didn't move until the door closed. Then he turned to Thalia, and she saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Fear. Who was that? She asked. Someone from my past. Grant. I told you I left the family business. I didn't tell you they didn't want me to leave. He ran a hand through his hair. They've been trying to pull me back for 5 years. I keep saying no, but they're not good at taking no for an answer. Are you in danger? No. They won't touch me. I know too much. But they like to remind me I still owe them loyalty. His jaw tightened. I'm sorry you saw that. I'm not. Thalia walked over to him. I want to know what I'm dealing with. You're dealing with a man who made bad choices and is still paying for them. We all have pasts, Grant. Not like mine. Maybe not, but I'm still here. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. I'm not going anywhere. Grant's arms came around her, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you have me anyway. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. A week later, Grant asked her to move in with him. Not just the resort suite, his place in Denver. A real home. That's a big step, Thalia said. I know. We've only known each other a month. I know that too. Grant pulled her onto his lap. But I don't care. I want you with me. Every day, every night, all of it. What if we're moving too fast? Then we'll figure it out together. His hand cupped her face. I've never felt like this about anyone, Thalia. I'm not letting you go. You're very possessive. I am. Does that bother you? She thought about it. About the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. About the way he touched her like she was precious. About the way he'd opened his life to her without hesitation. No, she said. It doesn't bother me. Good, because I'm not changing. Thalia laughed and kissed him. I wouldn't want you to. 6 months later, Ridgeline Summit was thriving. Thalia had taken over guest relations and event planning, and her ideas had brought in more bookings than the resort had seen in years. Grant let her run with it, trusting her instincts. They lived in Denver during the week and spent weekends at the resort. It wasn't the life Thalia had imagined for herself, but it was better than anything she could have planned. She still thought about that morning on the side of the road sometimes, about getting into a stranger's Porsche because she had no other choice, about trusting him when every instinct told her to run. She'd made the right call. Grant found her on the deck of their Denver house one evening, watching the sunset. Hey, he said, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. What are you thinking about? That morning, when my car broke down. Regretting it? Not even a little. She leaned back against him. Best decision I ever made. Getting into my car? Trusting you. Grant turned her in his arms. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that. I know. He kissed her, slow and deep. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. Marry me. Thalia's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. Grant, I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to ask you first. Make sure you'd say yes before I made assumptions. He smiled. I'm learning. Thalia laughed through sudden tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Grant picked her up and spun her around, and Thalia held on tight, thinking about how one random act of kindness had changed everything. She'd accepted a ride from a stranger in a Porsche on a frozen mountain road. And by the end of the week, she'd belonged to him. Not because he'd demanded it. Not because he'd bought her or owned her. But because she'd chosen him. And he'd chosen her back. If you enjoyed Thalia and Grant's story, subscribe to Mafia Tales for more dangerous romances where powerful men meet their match. New stories every week. Want exclusive extended epilogues and bonus scenes? Join the Mafia Tales Club. You'll get early access to new stories and behind-the-scenes content you won't find anywhere else.